I have found not having a record label for this release actually easier. I think the amount of people that are involved and the amount of approval you need to do anything really slows down the kind of possible fluidity that there is when you're like, right, I want to do this. Can I do this? Yes? Okay, good, let's go. And then you can just, everything's been so quick and you've been able to react instantly to anything that's worked. You've been able to leap on. And that's been amazing. And so much more fun. And even in terms of the engagement with the fans, I feel like they've really appreciated how quick everything can be. And also how the amount of freedom I had with the material before it was released meant that I could get people really excited in a way that I don't think I was allowed before. Or if I needed to, I'd have to film it and then send it off, make sure it was okay. And then by the time that had all been done, it was too late anyway. So being able to decide just myself if I think something's good enough, I can bounce it off one person and then I know that that's all right, because my sister's been managing me for years now. And between the two of us, we kind of know what each other's going to do next anyway, because we're brother and sister, but in one phone call, I can do something that would have taken literally a month. In terms of what's best to do starting out now between labels and independent, I think it really depends on the project, and not even the project, but really the characters involved. There's no way I could have released the first album because I didn't know anything about the industry. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just playing guitar and singing and writing songs. I couldn't have done it then. I didn't have the knowledge. I can now because I've been in the industry for 12 years. So in terms of that, it's very hard to make a call, but obviously everything is there for the taking. Between the fact that you can upload, you can get stuff just put on iTunes, put on Spotify. It's not a stone barrier that you need a label to get through. So there are ways of doing it, but I think it puts a lot more emphasis on kind of your creative drive, and your management as well, I think, have to massively step up in order for you to be able to do that. I personally feel that music never changes. I think music stays the same all the time. There is always people doing amazing, beautiful things. Whether you hear that stuff on the radio or not, changes all the time, weekly. And in terms of kind of what gets press, and whether it's musicians getting press or celebrities getting press who happen to do music, or all of that stuff is kind of cyclical and transient. It just moves. You can't focus on that if you want to do music. I think if you want to be a pop star, then yes, that is of paramount importance, because without that stuff, you're not going to open the doors that you want to open. But if you want to just have a career in music, you don't have to do that. I feel like I'm very much kind of a musician first, and everything else is a byproduct of that. I didn't start playing guitar because I wanted to be famous. I didn't start singing because I wanted to be famous. I liked it. I wanted to do it, and I found a job where I can do that all the time, which is an incredibly beautiful and amazing thing. But in terms of the effect it has, I think it has more of an effect on people's perception of what is happening in music than what's actually happening in music, which I don't think ever changes. I think there's always going to be people doing incredible things. Whether you hear about them or not, you might not hear about it till years after it happened. A record could have been made 3 years ago that's going to be massive that no one's heard, and then someone will find it on Spotify and be like, what is this? And then it could all change. But there's so many possibilities now, and I think whether it's whether it's like an X Factor TV thing or whether it's a sync in a film because the director just liked the song and then that propels it. There's so many possibilities, but I do think that if you do something that is good, then it'll be good forever. It's not gonna change. Obviously, some things date worse than others, but there's even there's radically dated songs in terms of recordings, but you love them because the songs are good, and if the performances are good, you don't care. No one cares. It's about the music itself, and I think if you want to do music, focus on music, and if you want to be a celebrity, then focus on that. But they don't have to go hand in hand all the time. With technology, kind of for everything, it's as useful as you make it. And obviously, I wouldn't have been able to record an album in my house and it sound good enough to be released 20, 30 years ago. It would have been impossible because technology didn't exist. You had to have a huge studio with massive, if you think of the progress in computers, it's just mind-boggling. And obviously it's very easy to get sucked in. And it's actually why I use Pro Tools is because I think I make decisions slightly more carefully than I did when I was using Logic. Logic was almost too easy to make stuff that sounded good, that I actually don't think I thought about what I was doing as much. And I pretty much use Pro Tools like a giant tape machine. I do very little editing. I use relatively little MIDI. I tend to try and play as much stuff as I possibly can. And I don't think I quantized anything on the whole album. I really wanted to make it as human as possible. And then live-wise, technology is invaluable because there's so many things you can do, there's so many toys. I've got really into kind of little odd synths, like the pocket synth from, is it Critter and Guitari one. It's on every single track because it just makes it sound, if you've got a guitar and that, the guitars sound good because I've got a good room and I use decent mics and I've got nowhere to put them, and that's cool. And then what the little electronic touches do is just modernize it, just make it so you know when it was made. So you know it wasn't made in the 70s. It has to be in the last few years at least, because of the kind of sounds. And that, I think the main problem at the moment for me with the way that people are producing music is over-editing and it's everything from auto-tuning vocals to auto-correcting timing on things. And I'm a huge fan of rooms and real reverbs and kind of real stuff. I think Studio Zero is not a very polished sounding album, but while I was making it, I learned everything I needed to learn to make this one, and I think I learned what I like. And what I like is room sounds and trains and birds, and the world it doesn't need to be in this kind of perfectly soundproof box where nothing can get in or out. And I love room sounds. I love Tom Waits and stuff that sounds like it was actually played by a human in a real place, and I think there's a huge space for that. And I think everything is probably going to start going further that way because we can't go any further down the processed route because there's nowhere else to go. We are now, in terms of auto-tuned vocals and auto-timed, there's no further you can go. We've dehumanized it as much as possible. Well, artist development is a kind of fascinating and lost art because it was originally done by record labels. They'd sign someone because they knew at some point they would do something really good. That doesn't happen anymore. It's not really their fault. It's because they can't afford. They can't afford to have anyone on their books that isn't making money, because they're not making enough money to do that. So you kind of have to do most of their job for them. I mean, publishing companies took over for a bit. They started developing artists a bit more. I don't know, because I'm kind of out of the loop in terms of publishing at the moment, how much even that's happening. I think you kind of have to do everyone's job to get through the door, if that's the door you want to go through. So yeah, you have to completely starve yourself. You have to get things produced to a point where they're listenable to. I mean, artist development and demos have completely disappeared. Like, demos do not exist. And I remember, I've actually worked with people who pretend that they can't remember demos. And I'm like, but I used to send you demos. Why can't you respect? And this is kind of over like a 6-year period. They're like, yeah, but it doesn't sound finished. I was like, it's not finished. It's not supposed to be finished. It's a demo. It's the song. Just listen to the song. And they were like, no one listens to songs anymore. It has to sound like a finished record before anyone hears it. And that, I think, being able to handle your own production to as literally as far as you possibly can is going to do you the world of good in terms of getting stuff off the ground. Or finding a producer that you get on with and is happy to do like some stuff to get it moving, to get you signed and then pay them afterwards, and is kind of going to be a bit more kind of wheelie-dealy, I guess, in that thing to get that all up and running. But starting out, it's hard. It's hard to know what's going to happen next. It's obviously everything's changed and is continuing to change. There's the Spotifys and the YouTubes and the Apple Musics, and streaming in general is still kind of an unknown quantity in terms of how it's going to work long term. I think we need to protect music as a full-time job, because I think otherwise we're really going to lose. We're going to lose something which is priceless, I think. And I think without people that can completely dedicate their lives to music, I think music itself could actually start to suffer for the first time. So obviously you're always going to get people doing it just because they love it, but if you can't make enough to get by, and I know a lot of amazing players and a lot of amazing artists who have to do other jobs because it's only like that very top few percent that make enough to live. And that's kind of heartbreaking because they're amazing players. It was when I knew like loads of amazing players who were touring the world miming, and I was like, waste! This is horrific! Come on! But it was like, this pays better than any gigs I get where I'm actually playing. So that's a very strange state of affairs, but I think it will kind of self-correct because it has to. Obviously, touring and gigs, you can make enough money. I think session players and songwriters have been hit really hard in the last few years. It's a nightmare. Obviously, again, there's that very top kind of 2% of people that can make a proper living and do all right. But everything's also completely up for grabs. Because with Spotify and with all these other avenues and a complete kind of openness of being able to release stuff and put stuff up, and whatever you do, even if, I think it's how people are discovering music and discovering players even. It's just online. So I think you have to, if you want to promote yourself, I think you have to kind of start putting yourself out there as soon as possible and start building up something. And I think even if you want to be a session player, I think if you start uploading videos of yourself playing really well, you're far more likely to get gigs because someone just saw the video of you playing. I mean, it's kind of happening in everything, even like voice acting, like people that are looking for people to play characters and things, go on the internet and see who's made something themselves, as opposed to going to like agencies and stuff. It's all like everything's based on what you yourself can create and get to a certain level, and then you kind of need people to see that and be like, right, that's awesome, we can definitely do something with that, let's take it to the next level, let's get this guy involved. Which is, I think, should be good. I mean, the one thing that hasn't happened with the kind of rise of the internet is I was hoping for considerably more completely rogue pieces of music kind of rising up the chain, and I think I'm still analysing, actually. I'm still trying to work out how that's happening. I think people do like having things narrowed down a bit. And I think even if you narrow things down the tiniest bit, then there's powers and there's agendas and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that gets involved, whether it's the Radio 1 playlist or a Spotify playlist or any of this stuff. Someone is saying, don't listen to any of this stuff, listen to this stuff, this is the good stuff. And people, I didn't realise how much people needed that, because I'm like a bold explorer of the internet musically. I love following like influence chains for days, weeks, just down. And I like just pressing it until I don't recognise anything. We're like, right, what's all this stuff? And kind of tapping into like other cultures as well, like cultural music as well, digging like deep into world music land, finding, and I think, I don't know what it's going to take to kind of loosen the stranglehold on the industry that kind of the pop and the money has. But I think that will happen at some point, because I think people are starting to get a bit bored of the same stuff all the time and the same people all the time, when there's so much music in the world and there's so many spectacularly talented human beings doing beautiful stuff, and it's just finding a way of where it's like a more level playing field for something that's good to just get shared everywhere. And like YouTube is good for that. You get fascinating like bits of just guitar playing that go everywhere. Like Mike Dawes playing Metallica, I think, just hit 10 million views or something mental. And that is just because he's really good. And there's these little like pockets of hope. And I think hopefully you'll see that more and more. And I'd like to see it more with songs. But I don't know what it's going to take to kind of create a landscape where that's possible.